The entire airport watched as an elderly woman was publicly denied her first-class seat. Nobody stepped forward. Nobody except the most feared mafia king in New York. What he didn't know was that the fragile old woman everyone mocked controlled a hidden billion-dollar empire. The private terminal at JFK International Airport was designed for people who never waited in lines. Wealthy executives, celebrities, politicians, and billionaires moved through its luxurious halls with quiet confidence. Expensive luggage rolled across polished marble floors while private assistants handled every inconvenience before it could become a problem. It was a world built on status, power, and influence. Damian Cross sat alone near the massive glass windows overlooking the runway. At 36 years old, he had become one of the most powerful men on the East Coast. Publicly, few people knew his name. Privately, his empire stretched across New York, Boston, and Chicago. Loyalty built his organization. Control protected it. Fear maintained it. People who entered his world quickly learned that Damian rarely wasted time on problems that didn't concern him. That morning, however, something unusual caught his attention. Near the boarding gate, an elderly woman stood clutching a worn leather handbag and an old boarding pass. Her silver hair was neatly arranged, and her clothing was simple but elegant. Yet the airline staff surrounding her looked increasingly impatient. Several wealthy passengers nearby exchanged amused glances. Some whispered. Some laughed. Others simply watched. The elderly woman remained calm despite the growing humiliation. According to the airline representatives, her first-class ticket couldn't be verified in the system. They insisted there had been a mistake. She was politely but firmly instructed to move aside while other passengers boarded. The situation quickly became uncomfortable. The woman tried presenting additional documents. Nobody seemed interested. The crowd had already made its judgment. To them, she looked like someone who didn't belong. The humiliation spread through the terminal like a silent wave. Damian noticed the subtle fear hidden behind the woman's composed expression. He noticed how tightly she held her handbag. He noticed the loneliness of standing in a crowded room where nobody offered help. Most importantly, he noticed that everyone looked away. Nobody wanted involvement. His security team noticed his attention immediately. One of his closest advisors quietly suggested ignoring the situation. It wasn't their business. They had a flight to catch and meetings waiting overseas. Every instinct suggested walking away. Yet Damian continued watching. Something about the woman felt different. A strange feeling settled over him. The kind of feeling his instincts rarely ignored. As the airline supervisor prepared to remove the elderly passenger from the boarding area entirely, Damian stood. The terminal seemed to pause. Several people immediately recognized him. Even those who didn't know his name sensed the authority surrounding him. Power had a presence. Damian carried it effortlessly. Without raising his voice, he approached the gate. The atmosphere changed instantly. Confidence returned to the airline employees moments earlier. Now uncertainty replaced it. Damian calmly reviewed the situation before making a simple decision. He offered the woman his own first-class seat. The reaction was immediate. Passengers stared. Employees froze. Even Damian's security team looked surprised. The elderly woman seemed equally shocked. For several seconds neither spoke. Then she accepted with quiet grace. The tension dissolved almost instantly. Yet something unusual happened next. As passengers resumed boarding, the elderly woman studied Damian carefully. Not with gratitude alone. Not with curiosity. Almost as if she were evaluating him. Measuring him. The feeling lingered long after they entered the aircraft. Hours later, while most passengers relaxed during the flight, Damian happened to notice a photograph partially visible inside the woman's handbag. The image showed a young woman standing beside a waterfront skyline. Beautiful. Intelligent. Confident. The elderly woman caught him looking and carefully adjusted the picture. For a brief moment, Damian saw the name written on the back. Evelyn Sterling. The name meant nothing. But the face did. His expression immediately hardened. Heart pounding, Damian leaned back in his seat. Because only 3 weeks earlier, he had reviewed a confidential intelligence report concerning a secret assassination contract. And the woman in that photograph was the exact same target. As the plane climbed through the clouds, Damian realized this flight had become far more dangerous than anyone on board understood. The old woman wasn't worried about herself. She was terrified for her granddaughter, the last heir to a hidden fortune worth billions. While the world saw a successful young architect living an ordinary life, unseen forces were quietly moving around her, waiting for the perfect moment to take everything away. The flight landed in London just after sunrise, But Damien Cross couldn't stop thinking about the photograph he had seen inside the elderly woman's handbag. The face haunted him throughout the journey. Intelligence reports rarely stayed in his memory unless they involved serious threats to his empire. Yet Evelyn Sterling was different. Her image had appeared in a confidential briefing connected to a highly unusual surveillance operation. At the time, Damien had dismissed it as someone else's problem. Now he wasn't so sure. The elderly woman introduced herself only as Margaret. She remained graceful and composed throughout the flight, but Damien noticed subtle signs of concern behind her calm demeanor. Every time she checked her phone, disappointment appeared in her eyes. Every unread message seemed to deepen her worry. Eventually, Damien learned the truth. Evelyn Sterling was Margaret's granddaughter, the only family she had left, and the person she feared losing most. Back in New York, Evelyn's life appeared almost ordinary. At 28, she had built a respected career as an architect known for transforming forgotten neighborhoods into thriving communities. She avoided social circles obsessed with wealth and influence. Unlike many heirs born into privilege, Evelyn preferred independence. She rented her own apartment, managed her own projects, and rarely discussed family finances. What she didn't know was that her family controlled assets worth billions. Margaret Sterling had spent decades quietly building a financial empire hidden behind layers of trusts, investments, and private corporations. Very few people knew its true size. Unfortunately, some people did. And those people had begun moving against Evelyn. As Damien's curiosity grew, he ordered a discreet investigation. Within days, his intelligence network uncovered troubling information. Evelyn's daily routines had been monitored for months. Unknown individuals appeared near her office, her apartment, and even construction sites connected to her projects. Sophisticated surveillance operations followed her movements with alarming consistency. Fear slowly settled over Damien. Someone was preparing for something. The question was why. The answer arrived sooner than expected. One afternoon, Evelyn attended a private meeting regarding a redevelopment project along Manhattan's waterfront. The event appeared routine. Business executives, city planners, and investors filled the conference hall. Everything looked normal. Yet Damien's surveillance team detected unusual activity. Several attendees carried falsified credentials. Others had connections to shell corporations already under investigation. The situation immediately raised concerns. Without revealing his involvement, Damien redirected security resources toward the area. He wasn't entirely sure what he was protecting Evelyn from, but experience taught him never to ignore his instincts. The meeting ended without incident. At least on the surface. As Evelyn left the building, she noticed something strange. A black vehicle appeared repeatedly throughout her route home. At first she dismissed it as coincidence. Then she saw it again outside a coffee shop. Later, she spotted it parked across from her apartment. A feeling of danger settled in her chest. For the first time she felt watched. Meanwhile, Damien's team quietly intervened behind the scenes, disrupting surveillance patterns before they could escalate further. Several suspicious individuals suddenly disappeared from Evelyn's surroundings. Certain financial transactions connected to her monitoring operation were mysteriously frozen. Unknown barriers began appearing between Evelyn and the people tracking her. She never knew why. She only noticed that every time something felt wrong, the threat somehow vanished. Weeks passed. The pattern continued. Danger appeared. Then disappeared. Fear emerged. Then faded. An invisible guardian seemed to exist somewhere beyond her sight. Evelyn couldn't explain it, but she started feeling less alone. The mystery intrigued her. At the same time, Damien found himself becoming increasingly invested in her safety. What started as curiosity slowly transformed into responsibility. He studied her interviews, her architectural work, and the charitable projects she quietly supported. The more he learned, the more difficult it became to ignore the growing connection he felt towards someone he had never officially met. Then everything changed. Late one evening, Damien received an encrypted report from his investigators. The findings were shocking. The operation targeting Evelyn wasn't being directed by criminals seeking money. It wasn't being managed by outsiders trying to steal an inheritance. The order originated much closer to home. Heart-pounding, Damien stared at the final page. The person orchestrating the surveillance, manipulation, and growing danger surrounding Evelyn was connected to the Sterling family itself. Someone inside her own bloodline wanted her removed from the future. The old woman finally revealed the truth. She wasn't a helpless traveler. She was the richest billionaire in the city. The woman everyone ignored at the airport controlled an empire so vast that entire corporations depended on her decisions. Yet the fortune wasn't what shocked Damien Cross the most. It was the reason she had hidden herself from the world for so many years. 3 days after arriving in London, Damien received an unexpected invitation from Margaret Sterling. The meeting location was not a luxury hotel or corporate headquarters. Instead, it was a quiet countryside estate hidden behind acres of private land. The simplicity surprised him. Someone with Margaret's resources could have surrounded herself with endless displays of wealth. Instead, she had chosen privacy. As Damien arrived, the pieces finally began connecting. The elderly woman from the airport was no ordinary traveler. She was Margaret Sterling, founder of Sterling Global Holdings, owner of one of the largest private investment networks in the world. A billionaire whose influence quietly touched banking, technology, real estate, and international commerce. For over a decade, the public believed Margaret had retired from business. Financial magazines occasionally mentioned her name, but few people had seen her in person. She had intentionally disappeared from public life, allowing executives and board members to operate her companies while she watched from the shadows. Damien rarely felt surprised. This time was different. Even someone with his connections understood the significance of the Sterling Empire. Entire industries moved when Margaret made decisions. Politicians sought her approval. Investors followed her strategies. Yet she had boarded a commercial flight carrying a worn handbag and allowed strangers to believe she was powerless. The contradiction fascinated him. As the conversation continued, Margaret explained her reasoning. Wealth attracted attention. Attention attracted greed. The fewer people who recognized her, the safer her family remained. At least that had been her hope. Unfortunately, someone had discovered the truth. And that truth placed Evelyn in danger. Margaret's expression darkened whenever her granddaughter's name entered the conversation. She explained that Evelyn remained completely unaware of the true scale of the family's fortune. Growing up, she had been intentionally shielded from it. Margaret wanted her granddaughter to build her own identity rather than live beneath the weight of inherited wealth. Evelyn had done exactly that. She became successful on her own. Independent, compassionate, respected. The perfect future leader for the Sterling legacy. That was exactly why certain people wanted her gone. For the first time, Damien began understanding the larger picture. The surveillance, the hidden threats, the unusual activity surrounding Evelyn's life. None of it revolved around money alone. It revolved around succession, control of the empire, power worth billions. Margaret quietly revealed that several influential figures within her business network had expected to inherit portions of the Sterling fortune after her death. Evelyn's existence complicated those plans. As long as she remained alive, she stood between them and unimaginable wealth. Fear settled over the room. Not fear for Margaret. Fear for Evelyn. The deeper Damien listened, the more dangerous the situation became. Eventually, Margaret surprised him with an unexpected offer. She proposed a partnership. With Damien's resources and her financial influence, they could protect Evelyn while exposing the individuals working against her. Many men would have accepted immediately. Damien didn't. Money never motivated him. His empire already provided more wealth than he could spend in multiple lifetimes. Instead, he wanted answers. Who was organizing the operation? How far did the conspiracy reach? And why did someone place Evelyn on an assassination watch list months before any inheritance discussions became public? The questions impressed Margaret. For the first time since their meeting began, genuine trust appeared in her eyes. She saw something few people recognized. Loyalty. Damien wasn't interested in exploiting Evelyn's situation. He genuinely wanted to protect her. The realization changed everything between them. As mutual respect grew, Margaret revealed details of the Sterling family's hidden history. Decades earlier, several business partners had attempted to seize portions of the company through manipulation and deception. Publicly, the dispute disappeared. Privately, the resentment survived. Now it was returning. Corporate betrayal was no longer a possibility. It was already happening. Late that evening, Margaret finally opened a secured safe hidden behind a bookshelf in her private office. From inside, she removed a sealed document protected by multiple layers of security. Her hands trembled slightly. For the first time, Damien saw genuine concern. The document contained information she had hidden for years. Information she hoped never to use. As Damien reviewed the contents, his expression hardened. The report included financial transfers, private communications, and succession projections connected to Evelyn's future inheritance. But one page stood out above all others. A confidential directive. Signed months earlier. Its purpose was chillingly simple. Someone wanted Evelyn Sterling eliminated before her 29th birthday. And according to the timeline, that birthday was only 6 weeks away. For the first time in years, Damian Cross broke every rule of the underworld because protecting Evelyn Sterling suddenly felt personal. What began as a favor to her grandmother was becoming something far more dangerous. The deeper he stepped into Evelyn's world, the harder it became to convince himself that she was simply another person under his protection. The 6-week countdown to Evelyn's birthday changed everything. The confidential document Margaret revealed left no room for doubt. Someone was actively planning to remove Evelyn before she could legally inherit control of the Sterling Empire. The threat was real, organized, and growing closer every day. Damian understood one thing immediately. Waiting for the enemy to make the next move was no longer an option. Without Evelyn's knowledge, he quietly placed a security network around her life. It wasn't obvious. No bodyguards followed her openly. No armored vehicles appeared outside her apartment. Instead, trusted people blended naturally into her surroundings. A delivery driver near her office. A security consultant inside a neighboring building. A maintenance supervisor working near one of her construction sites. Every position served a purpose. Every person answered directly to Damian. For the first time in years, he found himself thinking about one person more than his empire. Evelyn, however, remained completely unaware. Independent by nature, she disliked the idea of anyone controlling her life. She built her career through hard work, not privilege. The thought of needing protection would have frustrated her. She believed problems should be faced directly, not hidden behind layers of security. That determination fascinated Damian. Most people relied on power. Evelyn relied on herself. Days passed and subtle threats continued appearing around her. Important meetings were mysteriously cancelled. Anonymous warnings arrived through encrypted emails. Unusual financial offers targeted her architecture firm. None of it seemed random. Someone was applying pressure, testing boundaries, waiting for an opportunity. Each time danger appeared, Damian quietly intervened. Documents disappeared before reaching the wrong hands. Suspicious investors suddenly lost interest. Unwanted attention faded before it could escalate. Evelyn never saw the effort happening behind the scenes. She only noticed a strange pattern. Every problem seemed to solve itself. The mystery stayed with her. Meanwhile, an emotional connection slowly began forming between them. Their first official meeting happened during a charity event supporting urban redevelopment projects. Damian attended as a private donor. Evelyn appeared as the lead architect behind several community initiatives. The moment they met, something unexpected happened. Neither looked away. For a brief second, the noise around them disappeared. Heart pounding, Damian felt the same instinctive certainty he experienced the day he saw her photograph. Evelyn felt it too, though she couldn't explain why. The attraction wasn't immediate romance. It was curiosity, recognition, a pull neither fully understood. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed repeatedly. Business events, community projects, private discussions involving Margaret's concerns. Every meeting revealed another side of the other person. Evelyn discovered intelligence beneath Damian's intimidating reputation. He listened carefully. He noticed details. He treated people with unexpected respect. Damian discovered compassion beneath Evelyn's confidence. She cared deeply about the people affected by her projects. Success mattered to her, but so did purpose. The connection deepened. So did the danger. One evening, after a late architectural presentation, Evelyn noticed she was being followed. The feeling lasted only minutes before the unknown individuals vanished. Another time, confidential project files disappeared from a secure server before mysteriously reappearing hours later. Each incident increased her unease. Fear slowly entered her life. Yet strangely, moments of calm always followed. Safe moments. Moments where Damian somehow appeared nearby. A conversation. A reassuring presence. A reminder that she wasn't alone. Margaret noticed the growing connection immediately. She saw the way Damian watched Evelyn when he thought nobody was paying attention. She saw the loyalty developing behind his carefully controlled exterior. More importantly, she saw something Damian himself hadn't fully accepted. He was beginning to imagine a future. For a man who spent his life focused on survival, that realization was dangerous. One night, while researching concerns about the Sterling family, Evelyn stumbled across an investigative article hidden deep within an archived database. At first, it appeared unrelated. Then she saw a familiar photograph. Her breath caught instantly. The article discussed organized influence networks operating throughout the East Coast. Several names appeared in connection with the report. One of them was Damian Cross. As Evelyn continued reading, shock spread through her. The man she had slowly begun trusting wasn't a businessman. He wasn't simply a powerful investor. He was the mafia boss feared across the entire East Coast. And suddenly, every mysterious event surrounding her began making terrifying sense. The greatest danger wasn't outside the Sterling Empire. It was hidden within the family itself. For months, Evelyn Sterling believed unknown enemies were hunting her inheritance from the shadows. She never imagined that the people threatening her future shared her bloodline, attended family gatherings, and smiled beside her in photographs. The discovery that Damian Cross was the feared king of a powerful underworld empire shattered Evelyn's trust. Everything suddenly felt different. Every unexplained coincidence, every mysterious rescue, every invisible layer of protection surrounding her life now carried a new meaning. For several days she avoided him. Fear wasn't the problem. Confusion was. She had spent her life believing people fit neatly into categories. Good or bad. Honest or corrupt. Safe or dangerous. Damian complicated everything. The man who protected her repeatedly was also the man newspapers described as one of the most powerful figures operating beyond traditional authority. The emotional conflict exhausted her. Yet while Evelyn struggled with the truth, an even greater crisis was quietly unfolding. Margaret Sterling's private investigators finally uncovered the identity of the people manipulating events inside the family. The findings sent shockwaves through the Sterling Empire. Several trusted relatives had spent years positioning themselves for control of the family's fortune. Publicly they appeared loyal. Privately they had been building a succession strategy designed to remove Evelyn completely. The betrayal was devastating. Among the names appeared cousins, advisors, and family executives Margaret had trusted for decades. Hidden financial agreements revealed an illegal succession plot that would transfer key assets away from Evelyn if she became unable to inherit leadership responsibilities. For the first time, Margaret looked genuinely frightened. The empire she spent a lifetime building was under attack from within. The revelation spread quietly through Sterling Global Holdings. Senior executives chose sides. Board members held secret meetings. Long-standing alliances began shifting. Loyalty became the most valuable commodity inside the company. Some remained loyal to Margaret. Others quietly aligned themselves with the conspirators. The battle for control had already begun. When evidence of the conspiracy started surfacing publicly, the people responsible moved quickly. Instead of defending themselves, they launched a counterattack. Anonymous reports suddenly accused Evelyn of financial misconduct connected to several construction projects. Media outlets received carefully crafted allegations. Social media campaigns questioned her integrity. She had been framed. The accusations were false. But they were convincing. Evelyn watched in disbelief as years of hard work were placed under suspicion. Clients began asking questions. Business partners hesitated. Investors became cautious. Everything she built through honesty suddenly felt fragile. Heart-pounding, she realized the conspiracy wasn't simply targeting her inheritance anymore. They wanted to destroy her reputation. Emotionally, it was the hardest moment of her life. Yet Damian never left her side. While others questioned her, he stood beside her without hesitation. He used his resources to trace the source of the fabricated allegations. His intelligence network uncovered hidden connections linking the campaign directly to individuals within the Sterling family. For the first time, Evelyn saw what true loyalty looked like. Damian didn't ask for trust. He earned it. Slowly, the walls between them began disappearing. As their connection deepened, the conflict surrounding the Sterling Empire intensified. Business leaders, private investors, and influential organizations became involved. Information wars replaced boardroom discussions. Corporate influence clashed with underworld intelligence networks. The struggle wasn't physical. It was strategic. A battle of secrets. A battle of influence. A battle for control of a billion-dollar future. The emotional strain affected everyone. Margaret blamed herself for allowing dangerous people so close to her family. Evelyn struggled to process the betrayal. Damian found himself carrying responsibilities from two worlds simultaneously. Then something unexpected happened. Margaret vanished. One morning, she simply failed to appear for an important executive meeting. Her phone remained inactive. Security teams lost contact. Private staff had no explanation. Every scheduled appointment was abandoned. Panic spread immediately. Fear consumed the Sterling Empire. The woman who controlled billions had disappeared without warning. Hours later, Damien received an encrypted message left specifically for him and Evelyn. The file contained only a short video recorded by Margaret shortly before her disappearance. Her expression was calm, but her eyes revealed urgency. She explained that she had discovered the identity of the true architect behind the conspiracy. Not a cousin. Not an executive. Not a board member. Someone far more dangerous. Someone nobody suspected. As the recording ended, Margaret revealed a single name. The name of the person responsible for targeting Evelyn from the very beginning. And the moment Damien heard it, he understood that everything they believed about the conspiracy was wrong. The battle for a billion-dollar empire turned New York into a battlefield where one mistake meant the destruction of everything Margaret Sterling had spent her life building. What began as a hidden inheritance dispute had evolved into a full-scale war involving powerful corporations, rival syndicates, political influence, and secrets buried for decades. The Sterling Empire stood at the center of the storm, and every ambitious player wanted control of its future. Margaret's disappearance changed the rules overnight. The video message she left behind spread through a very small circle of trusted people. Damien Cross and Evelyn Sterling watched it repeatedly, searching for answers hidden between her carefully chosen words. The name Margaret revealed belonged to a respected financial titan who had spent years presenting himself as one of the family's closest allies. In reality, he had been orchestrating the crisis from the shadows. The revelation triggered chaos. Board members began resigning unexpectedly. Private investors demanded emergency meetings. Financial markets reacted to rumors surrounding the Sterling Empire. Public confidence weakened. Every headline seemed designed to create uncertainty. Fear spread through the organization. The enemy's strategy was simple. If they couldn't remove Evelyn directly, they would destroy the empire before she could inherit it. For the first time, Damien activated every layer of his network. His intelligence specialists traced financial transactions. Trusted allies monitored executive movements. Corporate investigations began uncovering hidden partnerships connected to shell companies and offshore accounts. The conflict wasn't fought with traditional weapons. Information became the battlefield. Secrets became leverage. Influence became power. As rival groups maneuvered for advantage, public scandals erupted almost daily. Confidential documents leaked to journalists. Hidden agreements surfaced online. Several executives connected to the conspiracy suddenly found themselves facing investigations. The carefully protected image of the Sterling Empire began cracking under pressure. Yet amidst the chaos, something unexpected happened. Evelyn changed. The woman who once relied on others to explain the family's complicated legacy began taking control herself. Instead of retreating, she immersed herself in financial records, succession agreements, and corporate strategy. Every day she learned more about the empire Margaret had built. And every day she became stronger. She was not a victim. She refused to allow fear to dictate her future. For years, powerful people assumed Evelyn was simply an obstacle standing between them and unimaginable wealth. They underestimated her intelligence. They underestimated her determination. Most importantly, they underestimated her willingness to fight back. Working alongside Damien, she began connecting pieces others had missed. Old board meeting transcripts revealed inconsistencies. Historical financial records exposed manipulated transactions. Archived correspondence uncovered relationships hidden for decades. Danger remained everywhere. But now Evelyn actively confronted it. The transformation impressed even Damien. The more time they spent together, the closer they became. Long nights reviewing evidence evolved into conversations about dreams, family, and responsibility. The emotional walls between them continued disappearing. Loyalty deepened into trust. Trust slowly evolved into something neither wanted to name. For Damien, the feeling was becoming impossible to ignore. Protecting Evelyn no longer felt like a responsibility. It felt personal. It felt necessary. It felt like the future. Meanwhile, the battle for control intensified. The conspiracy's remaining leaders launched one final effort to seize influence before Evelyn's birthday arrived. Emergency shareholder meetings were scheduled. Succession challenges appeared. Legal disputes emerged from unexpected directions. Power shifted rapidly. Every day created new uncertainty. Every hour revealed another secret. The empire stood balanced on a knife's edge. Then Evelyn uncovered something that changed everything. While reviewing a collection of Margaret's private archives, she discovered a sealed file hidden among decades-old business records. The file contained correspondence, photographs, and confidential agreements dating back more than 20 years. At first, the documents seemed unrelated. Then she saw Damien's name. Her breath caught instantly. Heart pounding, she continued reading. The records revealed that long before Damien became one of the most influential figures on the East Coast, his family had maintained a secret connection to the Sterling family. The relationship extended back decades. Several financial arrangements and personal agreements linked the two families together in ways neither Damien nor Evelyn fully understood. The discovery was impossible to ignore. Everything suddenly felt connected. Margaret's interest in Damien, his unexpected involvement, the strange sense of trust that developed so quickly between them. As Evelyn stared at the final page, a single realization settled over her. Damien Cross had not entered her life by coincidence. Someone had connected their families long before either of them were born. And whoever created that connection was still hiding a much bigger secret. The woman everyone tried to protect suddenly became the most dangerous player on the board. For months, Evelyn Sterling had been treated like a target, an heir, and a liability. Powerful people believed she was simply standing in the way of their ambitions. They assumed she would depend on others to save her. What none of them realized was that every betrayal, every secret, and every attempt to control her had been preparing her for something much greater. The discovery connecting Damien's family to the Sterlings refused to leave Evelyn's mind. Night after night, she sat inside Margaret's private archive room, surrounded by decades of hidden records. The more she investigated, the more she realized her grandmother had been preparing her for leadership long before any of this began. Hidden among financial statements and corporate reports were handwritten notes, personal observations, and strategic lessons carefully preserved over the years. Margaret had left her a roadmap, not to wealth, to leadership. For the first time, Evelyn began understanding the true purpose of the Sterling Empire. It was never just a collection of companies and investments. It was a legacy built on vision, responsibility, and long-term thinking. Margaret had quietly shaped industries, protected communities, and created opportunities for thousands of families. The realization changed Evelyn. Fear slowly gave way to confidence. Every challenge she faced became a lesson. Every obstacle became preparation. The young architect who once avoided the spotlight began stepping directly into it. Board meetings that once intimidated her no longer felt overwhelming. Senior executives who questioned her abilities suddenly found themselves facing someone far more prepared than they expected. Evelyn arrived armed with knowledge, facts, and a deep understanding of the business they thought only they understood. One by one, she dismantled their assumptions. Respect followed. Not because of her inheritance, because she earned it. The transformation was impossible to ignore. Employees across the Sterling Empire noticed it first. Investors noticed it next. Eventually, even the media began recognizing the shift. Public narratives that once portrayed Evelyn as a vulnerable heir started describing her as the future leader of a global organization. She became powerful. Not through fear. Not through influence. Through competence. Meanwhile, the conspiracy targeting her continued collapsing. Investigations expanded. Hidden financial networks unraveled. Several individuals involved in the succession plot found themselves isolated as allies abandoned them. Years of manipulation were finally catching up to those responsible. Loyalty, once tested, began revealing itself clearly. Those who genuinely cared about the Sterling legacy stood beside Evelyn. Those motivated by greed exposed themselves. The empire slowly stabilized. At the center of that stability stood Damien. The connection between them deepened naturally. There were no dramatic declarations. No rushed promises. Instead, trust grew through shared battles, difficult conversations, and quiet moments of understanding. Damien admired the woman Evelyn was becoming. Evelyn admired the man hidden behind Damien's reputation. The more they learned about each other, the more their worlds stopped feeling separate. For the first time in years, Damien allowed himself to imagine something beyond responsibility, beyond power, beyond control, the future. And strangely, that future always included Evelyn. The feeling scared him, but it also felt right. As the weeks passed, emotional healing began replacing old fears. Evelyn stopped seeing herself as someone being chased by danger. She started seeing herself as someone capable of confronting it. The confidence changed the way she spoke, the way she carried herself, and the way others responded to her presence. A queen was beginning to emerge. Not because anyone crowned her, because she grew into the role. Then, just as victory seemed close, another secret surfaced. While organizing records recovered from one of the conspiracy's abandoned storage facilities, Evelyn discovered a sealed file marked with her parents' names. At first she assumed it contained routine family information. It didn't. The contents revealed correspondence, financial transfers, and confidential reports dating back to the year her parents died. Her breath slowed. Heart pounding, she continued reading. The official explanation surrounding their deaths suddenly appeared incomplete. Several documents had been altered. Certain records had disappeared entirely. Most disturbing of all, a familiar name appeared repeatedly throughout the file. Someone connected to the Sterling family. Someone Margaret once trusted. Someone who had played a hidden role in the events surrounding her parents. As Evelyn stared at the final page, a devastating realization settled over her. The conspiracy targeting her inheritance wasn't the beginning of the story. It had started years earlier, with the deaths of her parents. And someone she knew had been hiding the truth the entire time. The Mafia King thought he was helping a helpless old woman. In reality, that single act of kindness led him to the queen who would stand beside him forever. What began at an airport terminal as a simple act of compassion had evolved into a story of loyalty, destiny, power, and a legacy that neither Damien Cross nor Evelyn Sterling could have imagined. The file concerning Evelyn's parents changed everything. For years, she had accepted the official explanation surrounding their deaths. The records appeared complete. The investigations appeared finished. The grief remained, but the questions had faded with time. Now those questions returned. And they carried devastating answers. Together, Damien and Evelyn carefully reviewed every document hidden inside Margaret's private archives. Financial reports, correspondence, travel records, and confidential memorandums revealed a truth buried for nearly 2 decades. Evelyn's parents had uncovered irregularities inside the Sterling Empire long before anyone realized a conspiracy existed. They had discovered trusted insiders quietly redirecting assets, manipulating succession structures, and positioning themselves for future control. When they attempted to expose it, the information disappeared. So did the investigation. The betrayal had started years before Evelyn ever knew she would inherit anything. Heart-pounding, Evelyn realized her parents had spent their final years trying to protect the same legacy she was fighting for now. The revelation broke something inside her. But it also healed something. For the first time, she understood that she wasn't carrying this burden alone. Her parents had stood where she stood. They had faced the same danger. They had protected the same future. And now it was her turn. Meanwhile, Damien uncovered the final piece of the puzzle. The individual behind the conspiracy wasn't merely a corrupt executive or distant relative. It was a trusted family advisor who had spent years positioning himself as Margaret's most dependable ally. He understood every weakness inside the empire because he helped build much of it himself. The betrayal ran deeper than anyone imagined. Even Margaret had underestimated him. Then, just as the final confrontation approached, something unexpected happened. Margaret returned. Her disappearance had been intentional. She had gone into hiding after discovering evidence too sensitive to reveal openly. During that time, she secured documents, protected key witnesses, and prepared the final strategy needed to expose the remaining conspirators. When Evelyn saw her grandmother again, relief washed over her. The reunion was emotional. Not because of what was said, but because of everything that no longer needed saying. Margaret saw the woman Evelyn had become. Confident, resilient, powerful. No longer the young architect trying to avoid family responsibilities. A future leader. A future queen. The final weeks unfolded rapidly. Public investigations intensified. Hidden records surfaced. Remaining conspirators found themselves isolated as former allies abandoned them. Every secret they spent years protecting now worked against them. Loyalty prevailed. Betrayal collapsed. Truth finally won. As the dust settled, the Sterling Empire entered a new chapter. Board members who remained loyal were rewarded. Ethical leadership returned. Trust was rebuilt. Communities supported by Sterling investments flourished once again. The empire became stronger than it had been in years. Not because it gained more power. Because it regained its purpose. At the center of that future stood Evelyn. She accepted her role willingly. Not out of obligation. Out of belief. She understood what Margaret had spent decades building. She understood the responsibility attached to leadership. Most importantly, she understood that real power was never about control. It was about service. Beside her stood Damien. The king who once ruled through strategy and discipline now found himself protecting something far more valuable than an empire. A future. A family. A woman he loved. Their relationship had grown naturally through trust, sacrifice, and shared battles. Neither needed grand declarations. The connection existed in every choice they made. In every challenge they faced together. In every moment they refused to walk away from one another. For the first time in his life, Damien felt truly safe. And for the first time in hers, Evelyn felt fully understood. Months later, a grand ceremony celebrated the renewal of the Sterling Empire. Business leaders, community partners, and longtime employees gathered to witness the transition of leadership. Margaret officially stepped aside, placing the future in Evelyn's hands. As applause filled the room, Margaret smiled. The Queen had arrived. And beside her stood her king. Later that evening, Damien and Evelyn found themselves standing near the private airport terminal where everything had begun. Aircraft lights glowed across the runway. The same kind of quiet atmosphere surrounded them. It felt like a lifetime ago. One simple decision. One act of kindness. One elderly woman denied a seat. That moment had changed everything. As they prepared to leave, an assistant approached carrying a sealed envelope marked with an old Sterling family crest. Curious, Evelyn opened it. Inside were photographs, legal records, and a confidential family report recently uncovered during an archive restoration project. Her breath caught. Damien leaned closer. The report contained evidence suggesting that another Sterling heir might still be alive. Someone hidden from official records. Someone connected to a forgotten branch of the family. Someone who had disappeared years ago. As Evelyn stared at the photograph attached to the file, she realized one thing immediately. The Sterling story wasn't over. It was only beginning.